I scared you, didn't I? I scared you. I didn't. Oh, sugar. Just pretend that I scared you because that'd be funny to me, please. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, Mosasaurs. So, in one of my previous videos, sort of introducing Mosasaurs, we actually talked about the Agalosaurs, early Mosasaur evolution, we talked about Mosasaur phylogeny and relationships and such, but we need to get a bit more into the Agalosaur transition into the true Mosasaurs, as I alluded to in the last video, the basal true Mosasaurs. So, let's get into that. So, around about 110 to 100 million years ago, we had the Agalosaurs, which, as I detailed in the last video, are what we call plesiopedal, plesiopelvic mosasaurs. So they still have those arms, hands, and hips developed for terrestrial life living on the land, but they were starting to enter the water. Unfortunately, during this time when they started entering the water, they had a bit of competition. Someone was already at the shop, if you like. We had the classics, the long-necked plesiosaurs. They were around, and they were actually doing pretty well around this time as well. We also had their younger but yet bigger brothers, the pliosaurs, the short-necked plesiosaurs with the massive heads. They were basically the top predators around this time. And of course, we can't forget the allegedly true sea dragons, the ichthyosaurs. No, I'm not salty at all. These are whatever. Let's move on. But yeah, basically, these were the OG marine reptiles out of the big four, if you like. But they still suck. But also around this time, we actually have evidence of giant pliosaurs still persisting into the early Cretaceous period. A lot of giant pliosaurs seem to have existed primarily in the Jurassic period, but we have evidence from Russia of a giant, possibly 11-meter long pliosaur that was ruling the oceans of the early Cretaceous. So then the question becomes, how do we get from the Agalosaurs to the basal mosasaurs? How did they become the conquerors of the oceans for the last possibly 30 million years of the era of the dinosaurs? Well, that's pretty simple. This fella down here started to die out. Great time. Idiot. And yeah, these guys started to die as well, but they weren't dying off as quickly as the ichthyosaurs, so unfortunately we've still got some... And he did alright, to be fair. He actually made it to the end of the Cretaceous period and died out with the mosasaurs and the dinosaurs, so he did alright, you know. It just is what it is, isn't it? So, boom, around about 95 million years ago, we get the first evidence, or some of the first possible evidence, of the true basal mosasaurs. But wait, that's an Agalosaur, you're telling me? Well, you'll be wrong. So don't be daft. Just listen here, and your knowledge won't be naff. That is a true basal mosasaurid, and yes, it does look a lot like an Agalosaur, but this shows how well of a transition these animals went from being terrestrial to semi-aquatic and then later fully aquatic with the true derived mosasaurs. So the basal true mosasaurids actually had some more advancements in their hips than their limbs, so a lot of the changes were actually to do with their hips. Particular bones within the pelvis area actually started to reduce, and therefore the pelvis became more reduced and smaller, which actually became more effective at side-to-side swimming, particularly of the tail. So for context, they weren't actually tail-driven like the later mosasaurs were. They were sort of more lower back to tail region driven, so that whole part of the body was the engine, which made them less efficient in swimming than their later relatives, but it's as good as you get, really. Oh, for goodness sakes, not again! Family dinners again. I'm just waiting for people to kick off. Oh. So why have I brought this phylogenetic tree up, you're asking? Well, it actually serves quite an important purpose. So, around about the time the basal mosasaurids actually show up in the fossil records is when we started to see the distinct divergence between possibly 2 or maybe 3 of the mosasaurid families. We're not entirely sure how many major mosasaurid families there are within the true mosasaurs themselves. But at the moment, it's between about 2 or 3. I mean, personally, I go for 3 based on some of the differences between the families, but hey, another topic for another day. So, our first journey is to these fellas here. These are the basal russellosaurine mosasaurs, and there are 2 particular groups. So, the upper of these 2 groups is Tethysaurinae, which contains Tethysaurus and Pannoniosaurus, and some other fragmentary bits of other Tethysaurinae, possible Tethysaurinae, that range from about 95 million years ago, the Tronian, up to the Campanian, so about 72 million years ago. So they possibly had quite a long reign, but we're not entirely sure that all these animals are Tethysaurinae. Tethysaurus itself reigned from about 95 to 90 million years ago, and Pannoniosaurus lived about 10 million years later, so there's a bit of a ghost lineage in there. Next up, we got the Yagarasaurinae, which are the sister taxon to the Tethysaurinae, and that contains Yagarasaurus from South America, Russellosaurus from North America, and Romeosaurus from Italy. No Julietosaurus yet, though. We don't know where she's gone, but hey-ho. Oh Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? She's calling somewhere, and we just can't find her. Now, some of the more eager in the comments will probably say, yes, but at the moment, these two groups are lumped into Playa Platycarpinae, and I don't know why you're speaking like that, but oh well. Well, again, that's another topic for another day, but at the moment, I actually don't see those two as being synchronized into Playa Platycarpinae. Now, down here, we actually have this fella on his own. Dallosaurus. I wonder where he's from. It's Dallas, Texas. It's Dallas, Texas. I mean, where else would it be? Now, Dallosaurus was actually found alongside Russellosaurus. So we have a basal mosasaurine in Dallosaurus, and we have a basal russellosaurine in Russellosaurus. So potentially, this could be an origin point for the great divergence between these two families, but we're not entirely sure. We need more fossil evidence to actually verify this. You can hear the dogs in the background. I mean, whatever. I guess they're excited about mosasaurs. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's 2, maybe 3 major true mosasaur groups, and I'll explain what they are now. So, up here, we've got Russellosaurinae, which may be a defunct term, possibly, we're not entirely sure, but it contains Tethysaurinae, Yagarasaurinae, the projecting-nosed Tylosaurinae, which apparently just contains Tylosaurus, but I don't agree with that. Again, another video for another day. And then we have the Playa Platycarpinae, which seems to be the most diverse of the Russellosaurinae, with not just a number of species, but a number of different skull morphologies and ecological niches. Next up, we have the Haliosaurinae, which are sort of slender, faster mosasaurs, but some of the individual species in this group actually do get to large sizes, particularly with the Moroccan Pleurodens serpentis, which could potentially reach 10 meters in length. It's a big mosasaur. But then down here we got basically just the overload of mosasaurs. We have the Mosasaurinae, which contains basically most mosasaurs that we know of. You have everything from Mosasaurus itself to Cladastes to Prognathodon to Globidens to Thalassotitan to Plesiotylosaurus to... there's just too many, but basically there's a lot here. So obviously with the appearance of the basal true mosasaurids, we actually see that Aegyalosaurs seem to disappear from the fossil record. It's possible that they're outcompeted, but we don't really know. And these basal true mosasaurs, even though they have terrestrial limbs, they actually possibly never left the water after this point. They were basically almost fully aquatic, if you like. And it seems they spread quite quickly. You have Tethysaurus over in Morocco, reigning from about 95 to 90 million years. You have Russellosaurus and Dallosaurus from Texas. And you have Romeosaurus and Yagarasaurus in Italy and South America, respectively. So these basal mosasaurs got very far very, very quickly. They were basically starting to conquer the world. A particular adaptation that probably helped them with this is actually what's called cranial kinesis. That's basically where parts of your skull actually move. So the bones in your skull actually move in order to cope with stresses put on by biting down hard on something. But it also means that you can have a much wider gape. That was a horrible impression. Oh, like the Tasmanian tiger from that one video. Hideous. And that basically means that you can ingest more food and therefore you can survive a lot longer than your competition. An extra awesome adaptation that mosasaurs and in fact some of their closest relatives have are these teeth. These are called pterygoid teeth. They're positioned on the roof of... It's kind of like alien, isn't it? Jesus, that's horrible. No, unfortunately these jaws don't pop out of the mosasaur's mouth, but they do actually help grip prey when it is so far back into the mouth. And because the prey is trying to swim out of the mouth and is getting snagged on these teeth, the only way to get loose from those teeth is to swim down the throat. Basically a death trap. Basically, if you were swimming around with these things in the ocean, you would not want to get caught in their gob. Basically, the basal mosasaurs were starting to take over from where the ichthyosaurs and the dying off pliosaurs were, and soon enough the basal mosasaurs would become the derived mosasaurs, and the world would see the sea dragons for what they really are, conquerors of the world's oceans. But that is for another time. Alright guys, see you later. Hope you enjoyed the video. Comment down there, like, do whatever you want. Have a great day.